Good morning and welcome to the First Universalist Church of Yarmouth. My name is Sarah Whitty. I am on the board which keeps us connected to our mission and principles, and on Congregation Connections, which keeps us connected to each other. I'm so happy to be greeting you again this morning, alive and well from our sanctuary. Just Sam and I here this morning. I can feel you with me though, and it feels good, and I welcome you. At First Universalist, our mission is to explore our faith, embrace this community, and to engage the world as spiritual seekers. May we take those words to heart. Before our service begins this morning, I have two announcements. First, all are welcome to join us for fellowship on Zoom this morning following this worship service. During this time, we can catch up with one another after the holidays and reflect on the thoughts and questions that arise for us during today's service. Second, have you heard about the eighth principle? It will call UUs to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So, across the country, UUs are considering adding this to our 7 principles, and in fact, the UUA is planning to vote on it at the General Assembly in 2022. The UU principles are not a fixed creed, they're alive. First Universalist's Anti-Racism Working Group is organizing cottage meetings, kind of think like our old circle suppers, via Zoom in the coming weeks. So we're hoping that through small group conversations, we can be ready to embrace and endorse the spirit of the 8th principle at our mid-year meeting on January 31st. So please look for an invitation in your inbox very soon, maybe later today, and get right back to us. And if you don't receive one and you'd like to participate in a cottage meeting, please reach out to me or to Reverend Hillary, and we'll get you into one of those groups. But for now, take a deep breath and settle into this different but still sacred space and time we create together each week. And Reverend Hillary will lead us into our worship.
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah, who is both running the camera this morning and participating in our worship service. And thank you to Sam, who will be playing some beautiful music for us. And thank you to Kai, who is running our live stream. And welcome. How are you? Happy New Year. Welcome to First Universalist Yarmouth. My name is Reverend Hillary Collins-Gilpatrick, and it's with great joy that I say, whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, whatever you've done, whether you are going strong on some New Year's resolutions, or whether you've broken them all already, or whether you resolved to give up New Year's resolutions long ago, you are welcome here. And we're glad you're here. I'm glad you're here with us in this sacred space right now. First, you friends, welcome to January, a month in which we will celebrate and contemplate the theme of imagination. As we approach the Christian celebration of Epiphany this Wednesday, the holy date that marks the 12th day of Christmas, when the wise men arrived in Bethlehem and met the infant Jesus, that root magi jumped out at me as I reflected on imagination this week. Magi, of course, has been translated over time in many retellings of the Christmas story to mean kings or wise men. But magi is actually the plural for magus, which means priest, sorcerer, or, one who practices magic. So yes, at the root of imagination, we have the practice of magic. In the month ahead, I invite you to practice this magic of imagination, to strengthen your visionary skills, to break down all the walls that restrict your fantastic dreams, to make up a way forward when you have no idea how to go on, to welcome in what you didn't know was knocking at your door, to see more than what you usually let yourself see, to dream up a future that you don't think is possible, but move forward believing it can be, to play, to love, to be free, and to make space for others to be free. Welcome to the year 2021, everyone. Welcome to our month of imagination. Welcome to the month that we invite in the spirit of the eighth principle and let ourselves dream big. Welcome to the month where we let ourselves change. Our opening words are from Octavia Butler, a legendary science fiction writer whose ceaseless imagination has served as a battle cry, a warning cry, and a shout of triumph. Our reading this morning is her poem, excuse me, Earth Seed. Here we are, energy, mass, life shaping life, mind shaping mind, God shaping God. Consider this: we are born not with purpose, but with potential. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. My friends, good morning. Here we are. Happy New Year. How good it is to be together. How good it is to welcome change. Won't you join me now in our chalice lighting words as I light the symbol of our faith. We light our chalice in peace and friendship. Our opening hymn this morning is number 210, Wade in the Water. And Sam Chandler, our wonderful music director, will share a few words on the song before playing it. Sam?
Yeah, so this hymn, as well as many other hymns in our hymnals, is what's called an African American spiritual, and thereby it has a deep and powerful history, far removed from the experience of people like myself, white people. A little bit of history of the song itself. It was an African American spiritual, and it was, according to many historians, actually used to send some sort of message to slaves. Wade in the water, meaning if you travel through the river, the slavers' dogs will be unable to catch you. Beyond that, it also is drawn from a verse in the Bible and would be used to connect with Christian faith and also to connect with African musical backgrounds. So spirituals were used for connecting despite all the restrictions put on slaves by white slavers. They weren't allowed to use instruments, so they would gather together and create music using primarily voice and body percussion. So when white people try to perform this music, I think it's important to not be removed from that context. I'm going to be attempting to perform it in a way that gives the song justice, but I invite you, when you're listening to my performance, to think about the meaning of this song and the history of this song, more so than listening to my particular performance. All right, here goes. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in white. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Thank you, Sam. Our reading this morning was written by Adrienne Marie Brown, who is a future dreamer, social justice and Black liberation activist, doula, healer, Octavia Butler scholar, and author of the books Emergent Strategy and Pleasure Activism. The piece we read by her this morning is excerpted from a letter she wrote on New Year's Eve to the year 2020. Dear 2020, it would be a lie to say you were a reasonable year, a restful year, or a year I would want to linger in. I use the words dumpster trash fire often when speaking of you, and it was as literal as I could be. And yet, you were the last year of many lives, lives that mattered to me, changed me, grew me, touched me. You were a year of collective care that gave me small hope in the face of great obstacles. You were a year of manifestation for so many necessary creations. I made so much meaning inside of you, 2020. So I offer you my gratitude. Thank you for reminding me how precious life is. Because so much death came in these 12 months, I've had to reckon with what makes life worth living. I've gotten clearer on what matters to me, what I want to spend my life doing, and what I love. Thank you for teaching me about love. I love being alive. I'm so grateful that I care, that I love the earth, that I dream of and practice justice, and that I can laugh in almost any circumstance. I'm grateful that I can believe that even the lives of my opponents have magic and laughter in them. 2020, thank you for making me be creative with how I love. I love showing my precious people how much I care for them with gifts of song, ritual, and attention. I also appreciate the grueling and liberating labor of learning how to be honest in real time and trusting love to guide my relationships home. 2020, thank you for offering me back the practice ground of my body. When I couldn't travel or go swim or have adventures beyond my front door, my body truly became a wonderland. What can I learn here? How can I worship here? Where is the water within? How can I create a retreat for my body wherever I am? And how does my body want my space arranged? How does my body stay safe and connected? How does my body move through rage and solitude and still feel the miracle of interdependence? 2020, thank you for reminding me that all is love. This grief, that rage, that hunger, this loneliness, this meal, that kiss, those gifts, this phone call, that reunion, this parental hug, this tear of my family, those lovers' hours, that video dance party, this pounding heart, all love. 2020, you were an abundant year. I humbly place my cheek on the dirt for the abundance of lessons and surrenders and tenderness you offered me, you offered us. With love, Adrian. My friends, we just went through something together this past year. And we now come to a time in our service that's set aside for silent prayer, meditation, reflection, contemplation. As they are recorded, we'll not be sharing our joys and sorrows during Sunday services this year. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern you'd like to share with our community, join us for our Wednesday Vespers services on Zoom at 7 p.m. when we have a regular time for sharing. Please know that I'm also here to listen and hold your joys, your sorrows, your concerns with you. Do not hesitate to reach out to me and let me know how you are. In a moment, we'll enter into a time of quiet. This is perhaps a time to reflect on the events of the past week or year, look forward to what may come in the days and year ahead, or simply be here now, in this moment, and all that it offers us in sensation and emotion. So set down your coffee cup, your knitting, whatever activity you might be doing, and just relax into your body. Take a refreshing breath and enter in to this sacred time of quiet. Taking in another refreshing breath right now. Exhaling and making space in your mind and heart. Come back into this sacred space we create together. And for all that you felt, all that you hold inside, for all that you do not have words to explain or express, we hear you. We hold you. We wish you continued joy, immediate comfort, a path forward, and the seeds of peace right now. Amen. Let it be so.
Our half plate this week supports the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. This nationwide movement organizes and mobilizes poor and impacted communities and moral witnesses to become agents of change as they confront systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, militarism, and religious nationalism. The work of the Poor People's Campaign aligns closely with the UU principles that call on us to promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. You are invited to make your offering using the Donate button in the order of worship. By clicking on this link, you will be taken to Give Butter, a virtual giving site that accepts a card number, PayPal, or Venmo account. And you may also give your offering by dropping a check in the mail or using your bank's free bill pay feature. This morning, Sam will be performing a piece called Anti-Human Super Anti-Hero by Asher Platts. He will play Traumerei in upcoming weeks. This morning's offering has now been requested and will be gratefully received. Thank you. Now I'm going to go move the camera.
Thanks, Sam. So the last time I heard Wade in the Water sung in a UU sanctuary was in April 2017. I was serving as the director of Lifespan Religious Education at Cedar Lane UU Church in Bethesda, Maryland at the time. And not only was I living long distance from my family, serving one of the largest UU churches in the country, and renting an apartment a mile away from the Trump White House at the time, that spring, chaos erupted in our denomination. Perhaps you recall. In short, an outcry arose amongst Black, Latinx, and people of color in our faith, specifically ministers and staff, regarding explicit racial bias, racism, in UUA hiring practices. Misstep followed misstep in the UUA response to this outcry, which led to the resignation of the UUA president, Peter Morales, and relative chaos in our denomination. The consequence of this necessary calamity was a call to all UU churches across the country from the Black Lives of UU Organizing Collective and many non-white ministers, staff, and lay members of our faith to offer white supremacy teach-ins during our Sunday worship times. As one of the foremost UU congregations in the country, and one of the few still with a senior minister who is not white, Reverend Abi Janamanchi, Cedar Lane answered this call swiftly. And I will be honest with you all, when the white supremacy teach-in went down on our worship calendar, I was riddled with anxiety. I had a knee-jerk reaction to the term white supremacy, and I definitely asked Reverend Abi if I could just watch and learn that Sunday rather than lead. Nope, he declared, smiling. I would like to just watch and learn, so you will be one of the leaders. Cedar Lane had 4 ministers at the time, plus a ministerial intern. 3 of us were white, and we would be the ones in charge of planning and facilitating this teach-in. Despite the steep learning curve, we managed to pull together a powerful, vulnerable service that involved multiple white members of our congregation sharing from the pulpit what white supremacist culture meant to them, and how societies and institutions that prioritized and empowered white people over people of color had impacted their lives, perspectives, and loved ones. Reverend Abi invited Elise Bryant, the director of the DC Labor Chorus, to offer music that day. The DC Labor Chorus is a multiracial, multicultural powerhouse of a choir that lifts up the heritage of the American worker and unions. And Elise Bryant is a vibrant leader who has one of those resonant voices that both lifts your spirit with fresh energy and settles you down at the same time so you can get in touch with your soul. She occasionally offered music for events and services at Cedar Lane, both with the chorus and without. And I was always excited when she did, though I was foolishly bashful around her. I think, Elise Bryant is really cool and intimidating. She opened the service by singing Wade in the Water a cappella. She walked down the aisle as she sang it, looking at those gathered right straight in the eyes as she repeated the chorus. She kicked us off by troubling our waters. My role in the service was to offer an opening reading and a time of quiet. You all know how I love inviting folks to breathe deeply and be quiet. And then later in the service, I was in charge of leading folks in a participatory turn to your neighbor and talk about ABC for a few minutes. Cedar Lane had 2 services on Sunday mornings. I was anxious before the first service. We all were. But Elise Bryant singing Wade in the Water felt like a firm directive to get over the angst and dive in. The white supremacy teach-in that morning was heavy, emotional, messy, and just true. And for all these reasons, it was powerful and good and important. Alongside the weight of it all, the teach-in was also a spirited, hopeful, liberatory experience. And when it came time for me to lead those gathered in the Turn to Your Neighbor activity, I was feeling joyful about what we had created together and relieved. I invited folks to turn to their neighbor and share a piece of media, art, scholarship, or music that was energizing them and bringing them strength, joy, and hope in our continued work to dismantle racism. The din of energized conversations arose in the sanctuary, and I caught bright eyes of various folks as they spoke to those around them. We ended the service with a rousing musical number and a call to action, and we all gathered in the back of the sanctuary to shake hands as folks headed out and those arriving for the next service headed in. As we lingered in the back of the sanctuary, Elise walked over and pulled me aside. That went well, but you need to change that last part. You threw it all off course with that question you asked everyone to answer. Okay. What was wrong with the question? You can't just turn to comfort and joy that fast. You all aren't there yet. Nor do I want to walk around hearing white folks talking about the ways they are using the art and music of Black folks to make themselves feel better right now. It perhaps goes without saying at this point that Elise Bryant is Black. And so not only was she a brave and strong soul for agreeing to participate in a first ever white supremacy teach-in led by white ministers and white lay leaders, primarily for the education of white members of our congregation, her opinion about how it all felt, looked, and sounded was paramount. And of course, I also already held her in really high esteem. So her comments here stung. But from all the preparatory work I did for the teach-in, I knew it was not my place to question her or get defensive about it. That, though, did not prevent me from stumbling all over myself, awash in the sea of white fragility. Okay. I'm sorry. I hear that, I responded, or something along those lines. She stood there solemnly. I recognized what a compassionate being she was for calling me out and now holding this space for me to process. I tried to stay steady and focused despite the flames of shame and anxiety coursing through my being. Elise, can I ask you what might be a better question? Ha! She laughed. That's not my job. No, that's your job. She looked at me, raised her eyebrows, nodded, and walked away. I had one last internal freak out, and then my sympathetic nervous system kicked in, and I realized I'd been called out, called in, and called to action. I came up with a new plan, and we all waded into the waters of the second white supremacy teach-in of the morning. As we gathered by the sanctuary doors at the end of the service, shaking hands with folks as they headed into coffee hour, I walked over to Elise. How was that? That was good. She firmly nodded. That was much better. Good, I responded with an exhale, and we headed into coffee hour 2. First, you, my friends. This experience has been on my mind these past couple weeks as the Anti-Racist Working Group and I have been discussing the ways we can invite you, us, our whole beloved First You community to consider the meaning and the purpose of the 8th principle. The 8th principle is, yes, a new and necessary principle that calls us to build beloved multicultural communities by dismantling racism and oppression in ourselves and in our institutions. The eighth principle was initially drafted in 2013 and was then endorsed by the Black Lives of UU Collective in 2017. A direct result of the circumstances in our denomination that spurred the white supremacy teach-ins that year. A denominational vote to adopt the eighth principle will likely occur at the UUA General Assembly next year. So, it makes a lot of sense with all that, why Wade in the Water has been stuck in my head lately, and why the memories of leading those teach-ins have been playing on repeat. And I will say, I had zero intention of sharing this story in a sermon with you all. Because, well, for a number of reasons, obviously, but mainly because I could not remember one main piece of it, the part that I did right. I have no memory of it at all. I have searched through notes and old Cedar Lane live streams trying to find that question I asked in the second service that gained Elise Bryant's approval, but I cannot for the life of me locate it anywhere. Still, this memory clamored away, and when I sat down to write some words to you all a couple days ago, I ended up starting 4 different sermons, all of which went nowhere before I just sat with this memory and explored it. And I realized in that process how interesting it is that I don't remember what I did right in this story, but I remember what I did wrong. And I viscerally remember the feelings of disapproval and approval that bookended it. This is not the time of the individual, Adrienne Marie Brown spoke in a recent interview. This is not a time to individually get awesome or brilliant or famous or whatever and think that's enough. This is a time about movements and communities. It is a time to shift from control to care. My friends, I invite you at the start of this year to make the revolutionary resolution to shift from control to care. Care for something big that's beyond yourself, beyond ourselves. Big, like ecosystem big, a movement, a whole, of which we are just one piece, one connection, one action that creates a multiplicity of reactions. I invite you to take this big, expansive, revolutionary resolution a step further and resolve to relinquish your need for perfection. Disperse your single-minded focus on approval, quiet your individual ego. I have spent years training myself to be wrong as quickly as I can, Marie Brown shared later in that interview. I know the sooner I can acknowledge that I might be wrong, the sooner I can get to learning. First Universalist, in the month ahead, we will explore, embrace, and engage the call of the eighth principle and imagine all the possibility it holds for us, for our faith, for our community at large, and beyond, for this big ecosystem of living beings who all deserve to live and thrive. How cool is that? We will need to trust ourselves and one another in this process. We will need to think and dream big. We will make mistakes. We will be brilliant. We will be confused. We will be wrong. We will be right. And in the midst of it all, I invite you to focus on the movement, not your individual brilliance or blunders. Reflecting on my experience leading those teach-ins, I have come to understand that if I focus on my soul experience, my blunders, my brilliance. I don't actually learn from my mistakes. I only deepen my anxieties about being wrong and cement my need for approval. It's all about me. I can't remember the thing I did right in the second service, the thing that helped the movement. I can only remember my personal feelings. And what use is that to the whole? This month, this year, this life, my friends, let's resolve to expand, to imagine, to practice magic, and let Octavia Butler's God of Change in. Why not? I'll say her words again. Here we are. Energy, mass, life shaping life, mind shaping mind, God shaping God. Consider this. We are born not with purpose, but with potential. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Deep breath. Let it be so, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 350. The words are in your order of worship, the ceaseless flow of endless time.
The ceaseless flow of endless time, no one can check or stay. Will view the past with no regret, nor future with dismay. The present slips into the past, and dream like melts away. The breaking of tomorrow's dawn begins anew today. The past and future ever meet in the eternal now, to make each day a thing complete shall be our new year vow.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for joining us this morning. All are welcome to come to our Zoom fellowship, where we'll have a time to catch up with one another and reflect on today's worship service. But before we do, I invite you to join me in a moment of prayer as I extinguish our chalice. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May we all experience profound joy and the causes of profound joy. May we all be free to change, to practice magic, to imagine, and to love. Let it be so. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon. Sam will close us out with a New Year's favorite.